Henry Jekyll was born in an old, solid house on one of the quiet streets of London, where medicine had been passed down from generation to generation as a sacred craft. His father, a physician renowned in medical circles for his impeccable reputation, was a stern and unyielding man. From the earliest years, he instilled in his son iron discipline, precision of movement, and a profound respect for science. In the evenings, the father would bring Henry into his study, where open anatomical atlases lay on the table, filled with detailed engravings of veins, muscles, and organs. He explained the structure of the human body as a complex yet knowable mechanism that could be taken apart, understood, and, if necessary, repaired. Henry's mother, by contrast, was a gentle, quiet, and deeply religious woman. She taught her son compassion, patience, and strict morality, reading him biblical parables in the evenings and reminding him that the true strength of a gentleman lay in the ability to restrain his baser impulses. The house was permeated with the scent of old paper, medicinal herbs, and candle wax. Bookcases stood everywhere, filled with volumes on physiology, chemistry, philosophy, and theology, from the works of Galen and Harvey to treatises on the nature of good and evil. Henry spent whole hours there, turning the pages, and even in childhood he felt a strange inner discord. A burning thirst for perfection and purity constantly clashed with dark, inexplicable impulses, sudden flashes of anger, envy, or the desire to destroy what seemed too proper and orderly. He learned to bury these urges deep inside, beneath the mask of an obedient, diligent boy. As Henry grew older, he entered one of the most prestigious educational institutions in the country. There he was quickly noticed. His mentors praised his sharp analytical mind, methodical work, and insatiable curiosity that kept him in the laboratories for hours. He delved deeply into chemistry, physiology, and the newly emerging studies of the human psyche. At university, he formed friendships that would become lifelong supports. With a lawyer, a man of law and order who believed in the unshakable nature of moral norms, and with a fellow physician, a sober pragmatist who was always skeptical of any extremes or speculations in science. To everyone around him, Henry was the embodiment of the Victorian ideal of a gentleman, restrained in manner, generous in action, invariably polite, and always ready to help. He knew how to listen, to comfort, to offer sensible advice. But inside him, an unrelenting unease grew. The more he studied man, his body, mind, behavior, the more clearly he saw that duality lay hidden in everyone: nobility and baseness, altruism and egoism, light and darkness. And the stronger his striving for perfection became, the more acutely he felt that these two natures were inseparable, and the more intensely he dreamed of finding a way to separate them forever. After completing his studies, Henry opened his own medical practice in one of the prestigious districts of the great city. His consulting room quickly gained renown. He took on the most difficult cases, developed original treatment methods, and published articles in medical journals. Patients from high society lined up: lords, ladies, wealthy merchants. By day, Henry was the embodiment of virtue and professionalism. He listened attentively to complaints, prescribed precise instructions, participated in charitable committees, treated the poor for free, and attended scientific meetings and discussions. Friends and colleagues saw him as an ideal, a man who had succeeded in uniting intellect, heart, and social standing. But in the evenings, when the city was shrouded in fog and the streets emptied, he locked himself in the secret laboratory he had set up in the back part of the house. There, amid retorts, scales, gas burners, and shelves stocked with rare chemicals from Germany and India, the idea that would ultimately destroy him was born. He became convinced that every person harbors two separate entities: a light one striving for good and order, and a dark one thirsting for freedom from all restraints. And if they could be separated by chemical means, then good could live unhindered, while evil could either be destroyed or placed under strict control. Henry immersed himself in reading medieval alchemical treatises, the works of Paracelsus, and contemporary studies in psychology and physiology. He spent hours mixing substances, recording reactions in a thick leather-bound journal, and conducting experiments first on animals. His mixtures made rabbits aggressive, dogs cowardly, birds frantically active. Every failure, an explosion, poisoning, the death of a test subject, only spurred his persistence. He spent entire nights adjusting proportions, salts of various metals, concentrated acids, extracts of exotic plants, powders from Eastern apothecaries. The formula took shape slowly, like a mosaic, through thousands of trials and errors. Finally, the evening arrived when everything was ready. In the dimness of the laboratory, lit only by the faint glow of a lamp, Henry prepared the first dose of the elixir, a murky, faintly phosphorescent liquid. He drank it in one gulp. Almost instantly, an unbearable pain pierced his body. Muscles convulsed, bones seemed to break and rearrange themselves, skin stretched to the limit, vision blurred. He fell to his knees, clutching the edge of the table. When the paroxysm subsided, Henry, or whatever remained of him, slowly rose and approached the mirror. Staring back at him was not himself, but a short, ugly man with coarse, almost simian features, a hunched figure, a crooked sneer, and a gaze full of pure, unmasked malice. This was Edward Hyde, the embodied, unshackled dark side of his soul. Hyde stepped across the threshold of the house. The fog-laden, coal-smoke-saturated streets of London became his kingdom. He wandered through the narrow alleys of Soho and Whitechapel, where the light of gas lamps barely pierced the thick gloom. He got into drunken brawls outside taverns, robbed late-night passers-by, kicked fallen beggars, and reveled in his absolute impunity and freedom. His actions had no purpose or motive, only the pure, animal expression of malice and the thirst for power over others. No one in that grim world could connect this ugly, stocky dwarf with the respectable Dr. Jekyll, whose name was spoken with respect in fashionable salons. Hyde rented a modest room in a poor district where no questions were asked and used it as a hideout. Then, as night drew to a close, he returned to the laboratory, took the reversing potion, and became Henry again, exhausted but outwardly calm. At first, the transformations were completely under control. Henry carefully planned each appearance of Hyde, no more than a few hours at night. He saw it as a way to discharge all the suppressed desires that had accumulated over the years. Anger, lust, the craving for freedom from morality and decorum. By day, he remained impeccable, pure, composed, worthy. The experiment seemed a grandiose triumph of science over human nature. But over time, Hyde grew stronger. The transformations became easier and faster. A slight impulse of irritation or fatigue was enough. The return process, on the contrary, required ever larger doses of the potion and brought ever greater torment. Convulsions lasted longer, the body weakened, and sometimes Hyde's features flickered in the mirror, even in Jekyll's form. The evil entity began to seep into everyday life. Sudden outbursts of irritation with patience, harsh replies to the servant, secret urges to smash something or strike out. Henry was frightened by these moments, but he continued to convince himself that he still held the situation in hand. One night, Hyde committed the irreparable. In a dark, narrow alley, he encountered an elderly gentleman, a man known in society for his impeccable reputation and virtue. Something in the old man's manners, in his calm courtesy, triggered an uncontrollable surge of rage in Hyde. He attacked him with a cane in hand, the very one Henry always carried. Blows rained down one after another until the victim's body lay still on the rain-wet pavement. The city erupted in outrage and fear. Newspapers filled with descriptions of the killer, an ugly, short man with inhuman malice in his eyes. The police launched a massive manhunt. Henry, returning to his own body at dawn and reading the first reports in the morning editions, felt an icy horror. He realized he had crossed the line. That same day, he resolved to end it all. He burned the records, smashed the vials, locked the laboratory with a key, and swore to himself never again to touch the potion. But Hyde no longer obeyed his creator's will. The transformations began to occur spontaneously, without taking the elixir, at the most unexpected moments. Henry might fall asleep in his gentleman's bed and wake up in Hyde's body in the middle of the street, remembering nothing of the night before. He was forced to hide, cover his tracks, lie to the servants. The house, once full of light and guests, turned into a grim prison. The old servant Poole noticed strange noises behind the locked laboratory door, saw how the master grew paler and thinner day by day, but remained silent out of loyalty. His friends, the lawyer and the physician, knocked at the door, sent letters, demanded explanations, but received only curt, cold refusals. His colleague scientist once accidentally witnessed a transformation. He saw the calm, intelligent Henry writhe in agony and then turn into an ugly monster. The shock proved too great. His health deteriorated sharply. He took to his bed and soon died. Henry desperately sought a way out. He locked himself in the laboratory for several days, trying to synthesize a new, more powerful agent to either permanently separate the entities or completely destroy Hyde. But the chemicals behaved differently. Salts lost their purity, solutions clouded. Formulas that had once worked flawlessly now produced the opposite effect. The body had adapted to the potion. The transformations required less and less stimulus, while the return became almost impossible. Meanwhile, Hyde grew ever more brazen. He blackmailed casual acquaintances, stole money and documents, left trails that inevitably led back to the house on the square. The city lived in constant fear of the elusive monster whose description appeared in every newspaper edition. Henry grew weaker with each passing day. He hardly ate, hardly slept, and spent hours sitting in the dark, staring into emptiness. His once neat clothing hung on his emaciated frame. His eyes sank, his hands trembled. In the end, he wrote a detailed confession, a long letter in which he set forth the entire story from the first experiments to the final murder. He left it on the table in a sealed envelope with instructions to deliver it to his friends after his death. The strength to fight was gone. In the final days, Hyde seized the body completely. Henry vanished. Only fragments of memories remained, flashes of horror and despair in an alien consciousness. When his close friends, alarmed by the long silence, finally broke down the laboratory door, they found only a lifeless body on the floor. Hyde, realizing he was cornered and arrest inevitable, had taken the last dose of poison, a bitter, scorching liquid from a small vial. He died in convulsions, carrying away with him the secret of human dual nature. Thus ended the life of Henry Jekyll, a man who wanted to free good from evil and in the end freed evil from all control. His story remained a warning. Some boundaries in the human soul are better left uncrossed.